What if the most important person in your life was sitting right in front of you, and you had no idea? For Melanie Evans, he was just Nate, her quiet, unassuming regular in seat 4, the tourist with sad eyes who ordered black coffee and stared at the sea. She treated him with the same professional kindness she gave everyone. She never imagined that this man who looked like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders actually owned a huge piece of it. She was about to find out that her biggest tip wouldn't be a few dollars left on the table, but an offer that would shatter her world and test the very limits of her own hidden potential. The bell above the door of the Salty Siren Cafe was the soundtrack to Melanie Evans' life. It chimed for the hurried fisherman grabbing pre-dawn coffee, the gossiping town elders dissecting the local news over scones, and the streams of summer tourists, their faces flushed with sun and novelty. For Melanie, each jingle was another verse in a song she desperately wanted to change. From her vantage point behind the worn oak counter, she saw the entire life cycle of a day in the coastal town of Port Blossom, California. She knew who took cream and who preferred oat milk. She knew Mrs. Gable's son was having trouble in school, and that old Mr. Henderson secretly fed bits of his croissant to his terrier Henry, despite his wife's stern warnings. Melanie was a master observer, a curator of small human details. It was a skill honed by years of practice, a talent that felt spectacularly wasted on refilling coffee cups and wiping down sticky tables. She had once been a promising student at a prestigious hospitality management program. Her final thesis project, a comprehensive data-driven plan for revitalizing a struggling legacy hotel by focusing on hyper-personalized guest experiences, had been hailed as revolutionary by her professors. Then life had intervened with the brutal efficiency of a tidal wave. Her father's sudden illness, the mountain of medical debt, and the need for a steady, immediate income had forced her to drop out trading her dreams of running a 5-star resort for the reality of a patched-up apron and the lingering smell of burnt coffee. Every day was a battle against the quiet hum of resentment that vibrated just beneath her skin. She was 26, and she felt 46. She was stuck. And then there was Nate. He'd first appeared on a Tuesday 3 months ago. He wasn't like the other tourists. They were loud, clad in bright new vacation wear and armed with cameras. Nate was quiet. He wore simple, well-worn clothes, jeans, a plain grey t-shirt, a faded navy jacket that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. He always took the small table in the far corner, the one with a clear view of the turbulent Pacific Ocean. He'd order a black coffee, place a $10 bill on the table, and say, "Keep the change." Then he would just sit sometimes for hours, his gaze fixed on the horizon, as if he was waiting for a ship that was never going to arrive. There was a profound loneliness about him that Melanie recognized, because she felt it in her own bones. He never read a book or scrolled on his phone. He just watched the waves crash against the rocks, his jaw tight, his shoulders carrying an invisible burden. Melanie treated him with a gentle, unobtrusive professionalism. She kept his coffee mug full without asking, always made sure the table was wiped perfectly dry, and never tried to force a conversation. She sensed he wasn't there for small talk. But one blustery Thursday afternoon, the cafe was nearly empty when a family of tourists stormed in loud and demanding. The father, a large man with a booming voice and a shirt that read "King of the Castle," slammed his hand on the counter. "We need a table for 5, and we're in a hurry," he bellowed, ignoring the "please wait to be seated" sign. His children were already running wild, grabbing sugar packets and leaving sticky handprints on the glass pastry case. Melanie maintained her calm composure. "Of course, sir. If you'll just give me 1 moment, I'll clear the large table by the window for you." "We want that one," the man said, pointing directly at Nate's corner table. Melanie's spine stiffened slightly. "I'm sorry, sir, but that table is currently occupied." The man scoffed. "He's one guy. He can move. We're a family." He started to stride towards Nate's table, his wife looking embarrassed but saying nothing. Before Melanie could intercept, Nate looked up. His eyes, usually clouded with a distant melancholy, were suddenly sharp and clear. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even stand up. He simply met the larger man's gaze and said in a low, calm tone, "The lady said the table is taken." The authority in his voice was absolute. It wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact, as unmovable as the rocks outside. The belligerent tourist stopped dead in his tracks, blinked, and then, looking strangely deflated, mumbled, "Fine, whatever," and shuffled back to the counter. Melanie quickly seated the family at the now-cleaned window table, took their complicated order with a placid smile, and returned to the sanctuary of her counter. From the corner of her eye, she saw Nate give her a small, almost imperceptible nod, a flicker of alliance. After the family left, leaving a mess in their wake, Melanie walked over to Nate's table with the coffee pot. "Thank you," she said, softly, topping off his mug. "You didn't have to do that." He finally looked at her, really looked at her, and a hint of a smile touched his lips. He was being a jerk. You handled it perfectly, but sometimes jerks need to be told twice. His voice was deeper than she expected, a rich baritone. "It's part of the job." She sighed, a sliver of her frustration showing through. "The customer is always right, even when they're horribly wrong." "That's a terrible business model," he said, his gaze analytical. "It rewards bad behavior and alienates the people who actually do the work." Melanie was taken aback by the comment. It was exactly what she had argued in one of her old university papers. "You sound like you've managed a business or two," she remarked, half joking. He shrugged his eyes, returning to the sea. "I've seen how some are run. Tell me, Melanie." He glanced at her name tag for the first time. "If you owned this place, what would you change?" The question hung in the air, genuine and unexpected. For a moment, the Waitress facade fell away, and the hospitality strategist emerged. "Everything," she said, her voice dropping with passion. "The lighting is too harsh. The workflow behind the counter is inefficient. That's why orders get backed up during the morning rush. The menu is stale. It hasn't changed in 10 years. We source our pastries from a cheap supplier in the city when there's a phenomenal local baker, Mrs. Gable's sister, who's struggling to get her business off the ground. We should have a local's loyalty card. The decor is generic. It should reflect the town's history, the old fishing fleets, the lighthouse keepers. People don't just want coffee. They want an experience. They want to feel like they've found a secret, a place that belongs." She stopped, embarrassed by her own torrent of words. "Sorry," she mumbled, her cheeks flushing. I think about it a lot." Nate looked at her, his expression unreadable but intense. He wasn't looking at a waitress anymore. He was looking at something else entirely. "You shouldn't apologize for having a vision," he said quietly. He finished his coffee in silence and stood to leave, to Pontois. But this time, instead of just walking out, he paused at the counter. He pulled out a sleek black wallet that looked jarringly out of place with his casual attire. From it, he extracted not a $10 bill, but a crisp, formal business card. He slid it across the counter. Melanie picked it up. The cardstock was thick, expensive, the lettering embossed in a simple, elegant silver font. Nathaniel Davenport, CEO, Davenport Holdings. Beneath the name was a phone number and an address Melanie knew all too well. It was the address of the Cypress Point Resort, the sprawling, luxurious, and famously troubled hotel that loomed on the cliffs at the edge of town. Melanie's heart hammered against her ribs. Davenport Holdings. They were a global conglomerate, a titan of industry with fingers in shipping tech and high-end real estate. And the Cypress Point was their crown jewel, or at least it was supposed to be. "I need to speak with you." Nathaniel Davenport said, his voice now stripped of its Nate the tourist persona. It was the voice of the man who had stopped the tourist in his tracks, a voice of quiet, indisputable command. Not as a customer, but as an employer. "Be at the main gate of the resort tomorrow morning at 9. Ask for me." He held her gaze for a beat, letting the weight of his words settle. Then he turned and walked out the door, the bell chiming his departure. Melanie stood frozen, the business card feeling like it was burning a hole in her palm. The cafe was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the frantic beating of her own heart. The sad tourist in corner seat 4, the man who owned the failing palace on the hill. And he wanted to see her. The carefully constructed, predictable world of the salty siren had just been shattered, and Melanie had no idea what was waiting for her on the other side. The next morning, Melanie stood before the imposing wrought-iron gates of the Cypress Point Resort. The name was spelled out in elegant, sweeping gold letters that seemed to mock the peeling paint on her 10-year-old sedan parked down the road. She had ironed her best blouse 3 times, her hands shaking so much she'd nearly scorched the fabric. This place was the antithesis of the salty siren. The cafe was cozy, worn, and real. The resort was a monument to detached opulence. It sprawled across acres of prime coastal real estate, a collection of terracotta-roofed buildings, pristine golf greens and infinity pools that bled into the horizon. It was breathtakingly beautiful, and as Melanie had heard whispered in town, breathtakingly empty. It was a gilded cage, and locals said it had no soul. "I'm here to see Nathaniel Davenport," she told the uniformed guard, her voice barely a whisper. The guard checked his list, his eyes widening slightly as he found her name. "Miss Evans, right this way, please." The gates swung open with a silent hydraulic hiss. She was waved through, and the sense of entering another world was palpable. She parked in a designated visitor spot and walked towards the main lobby, her sensible flats feeling clumsy on the polished travertine floors. The lobby was cavernous. A massive crystal chandelier hung from a vaulted ceiling, and the air smelled of expensive generic floral scents. A few staff members moved about with a kind of joyless efficiency, their smiles as polished and empty as the marble floors. There were no guests. A woman with a severe haircut and a clipboard approached her. "Ms. Evans, Mr. Davenport, we'll see you in the West Wing conference room. Follow me." The walk was a long, silent journey down corridors, adorned with bland, expensive art. They passed a grand ballroom, its doors firmly shut, and a 5-star restaurant where the only occupants were staff meticulously setting tables for a clientele that might never arrive. Melanie's observations from the cafe flooded her mind, the harsh lighting, the stale menu, the lack of soul. Here it was, all that magnified 1,000 times. This wasn't a place for people. It was a museum of luxury. They arrived at a heavy mahogany door. The woman knocked once and opened it. "Ms. Evans is here, sir." Nathaniel Davenport stood by a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the churning ocean. He was no longer Nate. He wore a perfectly tailored dark grey suit. His hair was neatly styled, and the melancholy in his eyes had been replaced by a sharp, piercing intelligence. The room was dominated by a massive conference table, and on a large screen at one end, a series of graphs and charts showed a terrifying downward trend. Red lines plunged south, indicating occupancy rates, revenue, and guest satisfaction scores. "Melanie, thank you for coming," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast room. "Please have a seat." He gestured to one of the plush leather chairs, and Melanie sat feeling small and out of place. "Coffee?" he asked. "Black, please," she replied automatically. A ghost of the Nate smile appeared. "I know." He poured a cup from a silver carafe and slid it towards her. It was, she noted, a far better brew than the one at the Siren. "Let me be direct," he began, foregoing any small talk. "Davenport Holdings is a family company. My grandfather built it from nothing. This resort was his passion project, his legacy. And as you can see," he gestured to the screen, "it's dying." He began to pace the contained energy of a predator in a cage. "We've had 3 general managers in 5 years. We've hired the best marketing firms, the most expensive consultants. They all give me the same useless advice. Renovate the spa, poach a celebrity chef, launch a global social media campaign. They're throwing money at the symptoms, but they don't understand the disease." He stopped and looked directly at Melanie. "The disease is that this place has no heart. It's a spreadsheet come to life. It's sterile. It doesn't connect. It doesn't do what you said a place should do yesterday. It doesn't make people feel like they've found a secret." Melanie's throat was dry. What? What does this have to do with me?" "For 3 months, I've been coming to your cafe," he explained. "I wasn't on vacation. I was observing. I grew up in this town before my family moved to New York. I wanted to see it from the ground up again. I watched you handle dozens of customers. You remember their names. You anticipate their needs. You diffused that situation with the loud tourist, with a level of grace the last manager, who we paid $500,000 a year, could never have managed. You diagnosed the problems in your 2-bit cafe in 30 seconds with more accuracy than a team of consultants from Deloitte did in 6 months. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. Yesterday, you weren't just a waitress talking about pastries. You were outlining a philosophy of hospitality that is the only thing that can save this resort. You have the one thing I can't buy, an intuitive understanding of people. The air crackled with intensity. Melanie felt a dizzying mix of terror and exhilaration. I want to hire you, Melanie, he said. Not as a waitress, not as a manager, not yet. I want to hire you as a special consultant for hospitality renewal. Your job will be to be my eyes and ears. You'll have unlimited access to every corner of this resort. Staff operations, financials, guest feedback, everything. You'll observe, you'll analyze, and you'll report directly to me and only to me. You'll tell me what's really wrong. No filters, no corporate jargon. Just the truth. And I'll pay you 5 times what you make at the cafe. Melanie's mind reeled. The money was life-changing. It was a way out of the debt, a chance to help her father get better care. But it was more than that. It was a lifeline thrown to the woman she was supposed to be, the woman who had been buried under years of disappointment. Why me? She asked, the words catching in her throat. I don't have a degree. I don't have the experience. You have better than a degree, Nathaniel countered. You have a PhD in reality. As for experience, your cafe is a microcosm of this resort. It's about making people feel seen and valued. That principle scales. Before she could process it all, the conference room door opened, and 2 men walked in. The first was in his late 50s, with slicked-back silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. He was the picture of a corporate executive. Nathaniel, we weren't aware you had a meeting, he said, his tone oozing a syrupy condescension. I'm handling something, Harrison, Nathaniel said coolly. The second man was younger, closer to Nathaniel's age. He was handsome in a predatory way, with a charming smile and impeccably styled clothes that were just a little flashier than Nathaniel's. He exuded an air of entitlement. "Nate 'cause keeping secrets," the younger man said with a laugh, clapping Nathaniel on the shoulder. "Who's your friend?" His eyes scanned Melanie from head to toe, a dismissive glint in them. "Melanie Evans, this is Robert Harrison, our current general manager," Nathaniel said, his voice tight. "And this is my cousin Gideon Davenport." Gideon's smile widened, but it was all teeth. "A pleasure, Melanie." He extended a hand, and his grip was briefly firm, a power move. "Are you a new guest? I'd have remembered a face like yours." Melanie felt herself shrink under their combined gaze. This was the world she was being asked to enter. It was a world of sharks in expensive suits. "Ms. Evans is my new consultant," Nathaniel stated flatly, watching their reactions. Harrison's smile faltered. "Consultant? On what?" "We already have the team from McKinsey. On everything," Nathaniel cut in his authority, silencing the room. "She will have complete access. I expect you and your entire staff to give her your full cooperation. She answers only to me. Is that understood?" Harrison's jaw tightened, a flash of fury in his eyes before he masked it with his practiced smile. "Of course, Nathaniel. Whatever you think is best." Gideon, however, looked intrigued. He gave Melanie a long, appraising look, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Well, well, this should be interesting. Welcome to the snake pit, Melanie." He winked as if they were sharing a secret. After they left, a tense silence filled the room. "That," Nathaniel said, his voice grim, "is what you're up against. Harrison thinks you're a joke. My cousin, Gideon, is more complicated. He sits on the board. He has his own ideas for this land, and they don't involve a hotel. He'd be happy to see me fail." Melanie looked from Nathaniel's determined face to the daunting chart on the screen, to the memory of the two men who had just left. This wasn't just a failing business. It was a war, and she had just been recruited to fight on the front lines with no armor and no weapon but her own intuition. "I'll do it," she heard herself say, the voice sounding stronger than she felt. A wave of relief washed over Nathaniel's face, so profound it momentarily erased the CEO and brought back the sad man from the cafe. "Good," he said. "Your office is next to mine. Your first task is simple walk around. Talk to people, not the managers. Talk to the housekeepers, the valets, the dishwashers. Find out what they see. They're the ones who know where the real problems are buried." As Melanie left the conference room, the severe woman with the clipboard handed her a keycard and a welcome packet. The gilded cage had opened its doors for her. But as she walked down the silent, soulless corridor, she couldn't shake Gideon's words. "Welcome to the snake pit." She was beginning to understand that the resort's problems might run deeper and be far more venomous than just bad management. Melanie's first week at Cypress Point was a masterclass in passive resistance. To the resort's management, she was an anomaly, a curiosity to be handled with polite, dismissive smiles. Harrison assigned her a tiny, windowless office, a clear message about her perceived importance, and the department heads she tried to meet with were perpetually in a meeting or away from their desk. They saw a waitress playing dress-up, a pet project of the eccentric CEO that would soon fade. But Melanie wasn't trying to win over the managers. She was following Nathaniel's directive. She traded her blouse and slacks for a simple black polo and comfortable shoes, allowing her to blend in. She started where the resort truly began each day, in the cavernous laundry rooms in the basement. The air was thick with steam and the scent of industrial-strength detergent. Here, a team of mostly immigrant women, led by a formidable no-nonsense head of housekeeping named Maria, sorted, washed, and pressed mountains of linens. At first they were silent and wary of the newcomer. Melanie didn't ask questions. She just watched, and then she picked up a towel and started folding. Maria, a woman with kind eyes and hands worn from decades of hard work, watched her for a full 10 minutes before speaking. "You'll get your pretty shirt dirty, mija." "It's just a shirt," Melanie replied, her folds neat and precise. "My hands still work." That small act was the key. It unlocked a floodgate of information that no consultant's report could ever capture. Over the next few days, as she helped fold sheets and sort pillowcases, Melanie listened. She learned that the expensive high thread count sheets, a major selling point in the resort's marketing, were constantly being replaced, not because they were worn, but because they were being ruined by a cheap, harsh new detergent Harrison had ordered to cut costs. The new detergent was also causing mild skin reactions, leading to a slew of quiet but persistent guest complaints that were being logged as miscellaneous sensitivities and ignored. She moved to the kitchens, bussing tables in the staff canteen. There she learned from the dishwashers that the five-star restaurant's catch of the day wasn't from the local fishing boats in Port Blossom, but frozen bulk fish ordered from a massive distributor hundreds of miles away. The executive chef, a prima donna hired for his name, rarely even cooked. The real work was done by his talented but underpaid sous chef, who was deeply demoralized. Everywhere she went, the story was the same. Cost-cutting measures were gutting the quality of the guest experience from the inside out. Staff morale was at rock bottom. They were treated as invisible cogs in a machine their expertise ignored, their warnings dismissed by Harrison's cold calculus of profit and loss. Melanie compiled her findings, not in a fancy PowerPoint, but in a simple handwritten notebook filled with direct quotes and concrete examples. One evening, she brought her notebook to Nathaniel's office. He was poring over financial statements, a deep line of frustration etched between his brows. "They're cooking the books," he said without looking up. "Not illegally, but unethically. They're deferring maintenance costs, reclassifying operational expenses. It's all designed to make the quarterly numbers look less catastrophic than they are. What have you found?" Melanie opened her notebook. "The problem isn't here," she said, tapping his financial reports. "It's here." She told him about the cheap detergent ruining the expensive sheets, about the frozen fish being passed off as fresh, about the gardener who was told to stop planting seasonal flowers to save money, leaving the beds bare, about the bellhops being reprimanded for spending more than 2 minutes talking to a guest. As she spoke, Nathaniel's frustration morphed into a cold anger. "Harrison is gutting my grandfather's legacy for the sake of a quarterly report. He's selling the furniture to heat the house. He's not just gutting it," Melanie said quietly. "I think someone is helping him." She explained a darker pattern she'd started to notice. It wasn't just about cutting corners. Strange things were happening that seemed too specific, too targeted to be mere incompetence. A VIP guest, a well-known travel blogger, had her reservation mysteriously lost. She was given a standard room with a view of the parking lot instead of the oceanfront suite she had booked. The resulting online review was scathing. Harrison had blamed a system glitch. Then a small contained fire had broken out in a storage closet. The official report cited faulty wiring, but the head of maintenance, a man named Frank, who had worked at the resort for 30 years, had confided in Melanie that the wiring in that closet was new and the circuit breaker should have tripped. It didn't make sense. And the negative online reviews, they were too similar. Many used the exact same phrases: soulless, hollow, a beautiful prison. It felt coordinated. "This sounds like sabotage," Nathaniel murmured, his eyes dark. "Gideon, your cousin?" Melanie asked. "He seems so charming." "Gideon is a viper with a winning smile," Nathaniel said grimly. He believes this land is wasted on a hotel. He wants to level it and build luxury condos with no soul and a 40% profit margin. The board is conservative. They won't agree to sell the family's flagship resort unless it's proven to be an unsalvageable failure. Every unfortunate incident pushes them closer to his side. The pieces clicked into place for Melanie. Harrison wasn't just an incompetent manager. He was likely in Gideon's pocket, deliberately running the resort into the ground in exchange for a future payout. They weren't just fighting apathy. They were fighting a conspiracy. "What do we do?" Melanie asked. "We can't prove it." "Not yet," Nathaniel said, running a hand through his hair. "Gideon is careful. An accusation without concrete evidence would just make me look paranoid to the board. We need to fight back, but not by exposing them. Not yet. We need to prove them wrong. We need to show that this place can be saved. We need a win. A big one." His eyes lit up with an idea. "That project you mentioned, the one from your university, the hyper-personalized guest experience. Tell me about it." For the next hour, Melanie, finally in her element, laid out her vision. It was the thesis she had poured her heart into. It wasn't about grand, expensive gestures. It was about small, meaningful details. It was about using information, not just for marketing, but for genuine connection. "Before a guest arrives," she explained, "we send them a simple, elegant questionnaire. Not just what kind of pillow do you prefer, but what's your favorite scent? What kind of music helps you relax? Are you celebrating anything?" Imagine a guest walks into their room, and instead of a generic floral spray, the air is scented with lavender because they said it helps them sleep. The smart speaker is already loaded with a playlist of their favorite classical music. There's a handwritten note saying "Happy Anniversary" with a complimentary bottle of the specific champagne they love. She spoke of turning the empty ballroom into a pop-up art gallery for local artists, of partnering with the local fishing fleet for sea-to-table dining experiences, of creating bespoke picnics for guests to take to the hidden coves along the coast. She was painting a picture of a resort that was not an island, but an integrated part of the vibrant local community. Nathaniel listened, utterly captivated. This was it. This was the soul. "We're going to do it," he said with sudden, steely resolve. "All of it. We're going to bypass Harrison. We'll fund it from a separate discretionary budget I control. I'll make you the official project lead. You'll build a small, trusted team. Maria from housekeeping, Frank from maintenance, that talented sous chef. People who care." He stood up and walked over to her. The space between them felt charged electric. "This is a huge gamble, Melanie. If it works, we might turn the tide with the board. If it fails, Gideon gets everything he wants." "It won't fail," Melanie said, a fierce determination in her voice she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't just fighting for Nathaniel's resort anymore. She was fighting for her own redemption for the dream she'd been forced to abandon. Suddenly, a notification pinged on Nathaniel's phone. He glanced at it, and his face hardened. "Speak of the devil," he muttered. "The board has just called an emergency performance review meeting for the end of the month. Gideon's pushing it. He's making his move." He looked at Melanie, the weight of his legacy heavy on his shoulders. "We have less than 4 weeks to turn a miracle." The gilded cage had become a battlefield, and the clock was ticking. Melanie knew that Harrison and Gideon would not stand by idly. They would see her project not as an attempt to save the resort, but as a direct threat, and they would do everything in their power to crush it. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of clandestine activity. Melanie Evans, the special consultant, became the general of a secret army operating in the shadows of Cypress Point. Her headquarters was an unused storage room, They'd cleared out its walls, soon covered in whiteboards, timelines, and architectural sketches. Her troops were the forgotten ones: Maria, the head of housekeeping, Frank, the veteran maintenance chief, and a young, brilliant sous chef named Leo, whose creativity had been stifled for years. They called it Project Lighthouse, a name Melanie chose to signify guidance and hope. While Harrison and his team of executives operated on the gleaming upper floors, Melanie's team worked from the ground up. Maria, using her network of loyal housekeepers, began compiling detailed, discreet notes on the few guests they had, learning their habits and preferences. Frank and his team worked overnight, fixing the long-neglected maintenance issues, repairing the faulty wiring, and even re-landscaping the flower beds with beautiful, locally sourced plants. In the kitchen, Leo was given a budget and free rein for the first time. He forged a partnership with the Port Blossom fishermen, creating a dynamic new menu based on the daily catch. The scent of fresh, innovative cooking began to drift from a kitchen that had long smelled only of apathy. Melanie was the conductor of this symphony. She was everywhere, encouraging, directing, and solving problems. She saw the fear and skepticism in her team's eyes slowly transform into excitement and pride. They were building something real, something they could believe in. The professional barrier between Melanie and Nathaniel had all but evaporated. They spent long nights poring over plans fueled by coffee and a shared sense of purpose. In these quiet moments, she saw past the CEO to the man beneath. She learned about his grandfather, a stern but visionary man who loved the sea. She learned about the immense pressure Nathaniel was under, not just from Gideon, but from a family that saw business as a brutal zero-sum game. He in turn saw the brilliant strategist she was, her mind sharp, her instincts unerring. He found himself drawn to her resilience, her quiet strength, and the passion that lit up her face when she talked about creating a genuine experience. A powerful, unspoken current flowed between them, a connection forged in the crucible of their shared fight. But neither of them dared to acknowledge it. The stakes were too high. Their plan was to culminate in a single high-stakes event, a relaunch weekend, for a curated list of influential travel writers, industry insiders, and most importantly, 2 key members of the Davenport Holdings Board, who were still undecided about the resort's fate. It was their one shot to showcase the new Cypress Point. Gideon and Harrison watched these strange new activities with suspicion. They couldn't stop them. Nathaniel's authority as CEO was absolute, but they could undermine them. Small acts of sabotage continued. A crucial delivery of custom-made amenities from a local artisan was accidentally rerouted. A negative story about the resort's past failures was leaked to a gossip columnist. Gideon played his part perfectly. He would stop by Melanie's ad hoc office, feigning support. "This is fantastic, Melanie, truly. Nate's lucky to have you. Just be careful. The old guard here doesn't like change." He was the snake offering a friendly warning, all the while plotting his venomous strike. The night of the relaunch gala arrived. The resort was transformed. Frank's team had rigged soft, warm lighting throughout the grounds. The lobby, once sterile, was now filled with vibrant art from Port Blossom locals and the scent of fresh cypress and sea salt. The staff, empowered and retrained by Melanie, greeted guests with genuine warmth, addressing many by name thanks to Maria's detailed prep work. The 2 board members, a stern woman named Mrs. Dubois and a pragmatic financier named Mr. Chen, looked visibly impressed. Nathaniel was by Melanie's side, a silent pillar of support. For a moment, looking at the buzzing, happy crowd, Melanie allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. It was working. The centerpiece of the evening was a grand dinner in the main restaurant, showcasing Leo's spectacular new Taste of Port Blossom menu. The first few courses were a triumph. The guests were raving. Mrs. Dubois was overheard calling it a revelation. Then the main course was served, a pan-seared local rockfish Leo's pride and joy, and the sabotage when it came was brutal and brilliant in its simplicity. A woman at a prominent table, a notoriously difficult food critic, suddenly gasped, clutched her throat, and dropped her fork with a clatter. My mouth is numb. She stammered, her eyes wide with panic. There's something wrong with this fish. A wave of fear rippled through the room. Another guest at a different table suddenly felt faint. The power of suggestion was immediate and devastating. People pushed their plates away. Whispers of food poisoning and allergy spread like wildfire. Harrison rushed forward, a mask of fake concern on his face. "Oh my goodness! Someone call a medic!" he shouted, ensuring maximum drama. Gideon appeared at Nathaniel's side, his face a perfect picture of grave sympathy. "Nate, this is a disaster, an absolute catastrophe. We have to shut this down." Melanie felt the blood drain from her face. This was it, the checkmate move. An accusation of food poisoning, especially in front of board members and the press, was an unrecoverable blow. It didn't matter if it was true. The perception was everything. But in that moment of chaos, something clicked in Melanie's mind. The woman's symptoms, a numb mouth, it reminded her of something she'd read about deep-sea fish, something obscure. Her mind raced back to her research, to the conversations with the local fishermen. While Nathaniel tried to control the panic and Harrison amplified it, Melanie slipped away. She ran not to the medics, but to the kitchen. She found Leo, his face pale with shock, staring at his ruined masterpiece. "Leo, talk to me about the rockfish," she said, her voice urgent but calm. "Is there any other fish it could be confused with? Something that looks similar?" Leo, shaken, shook his head. "No, it's distinctive. We get it from Danny's boat, the sea serpent. He's the only one who fishes the deep channel. The deep channel." Melanie repeated, her eyes widening. "Leo, is there a fish out there called a scorpion fish?" Leo's eyes shot up. "Yes, but they're dangerous. The spines are venomous, but more than that, some species carry a mild neurotoxin in their flesh. It's not deadly, but it causes paresthesia, numbness in the mouth and lips. Can it be confused with rockfish if it's filleted? By an amateur, maybe," Leo said. "The texture is slightly different. But why?" Melanie's heart was pounding. She grabbed her phone and pulled up the security camera feed for the kitchen's delivery bay, which she'd had Frank install a week ago. She scrolled back to that morning's delivery. She saw Danny the fisherman drop off the insulated crates of rockfish. Then an hour later, she saw another man, one of Harrison's junior managers, enter the cold storage walk-in. He was only there for a minute. "Leo, check your inventory," she commanded. "Every single fillet." While Leo and his team frantically tore open the remaining crates, Melanie ran back to the dining room. She found Nathaniel, his face grim. "Gideon is already on the phone with the rest of the board," he said in a low, defeated voice. "It's over." "No, it's not," Melanie said, her eyes blazing. She walked directly to the food critics' table. Harrison tried to block her. "Ms. Evans, this is a medical situation." Melanie ignored him. "Ma'am?" she said to the critic, her voice clear and carrying. "I'm so sorry for your distress. Can you tell me, have you eaten fugu or pufferfish before?" The woman, still pale, nodded. "Yes, in Japan. Why?" "The sensation you're feeling, this numbness, is it similar?" The woman paused, thinking. "Yes, it is. A little." At that moment, Leo burst from the kitchen holding 2 fillets on a plate. One was pinkish-white. The other was subtly different, a little grayer, with a slightly different grain. "We found them," he yelled. "At the bottom of the last crate. It's scorpion fish. Someone switched the fillets." A gasp went through the room. Melanie turned her gaze, cold as ice, on Harrison. "The fish was switched in our cold storage this morning. A mild neurotoxin that mimics a severe allergic reaction. Just enough to cause panic and ruin our reputation, but not enough to cause lasting harm. How incredibly clever." Then she looked past him, locking eyes with Gideon, who had just ended his phone call. His charming smile was gone. In its place was the cold, flat look of a predator that had been cornered. A system glitch, faulty wiring, and now tainted fish. Melanie said, her voice ringing with conviction. "The resort isn't failing. It's being murdered." Nathaniel stepped forward, his eyes blazing with fury as he understood the full scope of the betrayal. He pulled out his own phone. "Frank," he said into it, "secure the security footage from the delivery bay from all day, and get down here. You're going to help me escort Mr. Harrison off the premises, permanently." He then turned to his cousin, his voice dropping to a dangerously low growl. "And you, Gideon, you will come with me to my office. You and I are going to have a long talk with the board members about your vision for all these condos." The tables had turned with breathtaking speed. The gambit had been met, and it had been defeated. Melanie stood in the center of the room, no longer a waitress, no longer a consultant, but the woman who had seen the truth through the chaos and saved a legacy from the ashes. The aftermath of the gala was swift and decisive. In the privacy of Nathaniel's office, faced with the security footage and the damning testimony of Leo and Frank Harrison, crumbled. He confessed everything, detailing how Gideon had promised him a lucrative partnership in his future condo development in exchange for systematically sabotaging the resort. The two board members, Mrs. Dubois and Mr. Chen, sat in stunned silence as they listened to Nathaniel lay out the conspiracy. Gideon, stripped of his charm, tried to bluster and deny, but the evidence was overwhelming. By the end of the night, Robert Harrison was fired and escorted from the property. The board, in an emergency teleconference, voted unanimously to suspend Gideon from all his duties and launch a full internal investigation, effectively ending his career with the company. The snake pit had been cleaned out. In the quiet hours before dawn, the resort was still. The last of the guests had been reassured and had retired to their rooms, buzzing about the evening's drama. Melanie and Nathaniel stood on the grand terrace, the same one overlooking the sea, where he used to sit alone at the cafe. The salty air was cool and clean. "You did it," Nathaniel said, his voice filled with an awe that went beyond professional admiration. "You saved everything. My grandfather's legacy. You saved it." Melanie wrapped her arms around herself, a shiver running through her that had nothing to do with the cold. "We saved it," she corrected him. "It took all of us." "But you were the heart, Melanie," he said, turning to face her. The formal barrier of CEO and consultant had dissolved completely, leaving just a man and a woman bathed in the soft light of the coming morning. You saw what no one else could see. You believed in this place when no one else would. He took a step closer. The board met after Gideon was removed. They didn't just approve the Project Lighthouse budget. They approved everything. They want your vision to be the future of Cypress Point. He paused, his gaze searching her face. They also unanimously approved my recommendation for the new general manager. Melanie's breath hitched. It was the dream she'd abandoned, the future she thought had been stolen from her being handed back to her whole and shining. "I can't," she whispered, the old insecurities rising up like ghosts. "Nathaniel, I don't have the qualifications, the degree." "Melanie," he said, taking her hands in his. His touch was warm and steady. "Look at what you've done. You restructured the staff. You redesigned the entire guest experience. You uncovered a corporate conspiracy, and you did it all in under a month. If that's not a qualification, then the word has no meaning. Your work is your degree. This resort is your thesis. And you aced it." He looked into her eyes, and she saw the raw vulnerability that had been hidden for so long. "I'm not offering you this job because I owe you. I'm offering it because there is no one on this planet I would trust more to run this place. But I have to be honest, it's also a selfish request." "Selfish?" she asked. "Because if you're the general manager," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "it means you have to stay. It means I'll get to see you every day. It means we can keep building this together." The unspoken words hung between them more powerful than any declaration. It was about more than the resort now. It had been for a long time. It was about the quiet man in the cafe and the observant waitress who saw his loneliness. It was about the CEO who saw potential where everyone else saw an obstacle, and the woman who taught him to believe in his own legacy again. Melanie felt tears welling in her eyes, but they were tears of joy, of relief, of a profound and overwhelming sense of coming home. "Okay," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I'll stay." Nathaniel's smile was dazzling like the first rays of sun breaking over the horizon. He didn't kiss her, not yet. It was too soon, too much. Instead, he just held her hands, sealing their new partnership in the quiet dawn. 6 months later, the bell above the door of the Cypress Point Resort chimed constantly. The lobby was alive with the happy chatter of guests. The art gallery was showcasing a new local sculptor. The restaurant had a 3-week waiting list. Melanie Evans, in a sharp, elegant blazer that fit her perfectly, walked through the lobby, greeting guests by name. She moved with an easy confidence, her eyes missing nothing. Maria was now the director of guest experiences. Leo was an executive chef with a growing national reputation. The soul was back. She entered her office, the large, sunlit corner office that had once been Harrison's, and found Nathaniel waiting for her, leaning against her desk with 2 cups of coffee. "Black the way you like it," he said, handing one to her. "From the salty siren?" she asked with a grin. "I had it delivered." "Some things you just don't mess with," he replied. "How was the morning walk-through?" "Perfect," she said, taking a sip. "Mrs. Gable's son just started as our new valet. He's a natural." He looked at her, his love and pride so evident it filled the room. "And how is the general manager?" Melanie looked out the window at the sparkling Pacific, at the resort that was thriving at the life she had built, not by chance, but by her own merit. "She's right where she's supposed to be," she said, turning back to him with a radiant smile. And for the first time in a very long time, it was the absolute truth. An incredible story of hidden potential and the power of seeing the true value in people, not just their job title. Melanie's journey reminds us that our circumstances don't have to define our destiny. Sometimes the biggest opportunities come from the most unexpected places, and the quietest people can have the most profound impact on our lives. It's a powerful lesson in looking beyond the surface and trusting in your own unique talents. What did you think of Melanie's story? Could you have been as brave as she was? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will move and inspire you. Your support helps us bring these incredible narratives to life. Thank you for watching.